and good evening. And once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And it's Monday night, so, you know. New comics, bitches! So, obviously, again, just as a bit of a footnote, why do I open with obviously? It's just a stupid thing to say. Anyway, but just a quick, again, when I posted my video yesterday, my very brief tribute, if you will, or more of a statement, just to say that how much we'll miss Joe Kubert. And I did also, when I was reading more of the information today on like CBR and Newsarama, it was, yes, this August 12th was the same day that that Mark Grunwald and Mike Wieringo also died. So it's not a good day. Lost three pretty legendary figures on one day. I mean, of course, over the span of a while. But I wanted to wait until I got home to do that, but I realized when I got home, I don't really have any Joe Kubert books. I had them when I was younger. I had some issues of Sergeant Rock and some issues of Enemy Ace. Because I really liked, I liked Enemy Ace. I liked that comic a lot. Giving the point of view actually to a German soldier in World War I was a very unusual tack. But it was terrific. That was a terrific book. So, and just speaking of which, if any of you actually have seen Enemy Ace War, or read, I should say, Enemy Ace War in Heaven, which is Garth Ennis's World War II take on the Hammer of Hell. It's pretty goddamn good. So I definitely highly recommend it. It's a prestige format miniseries. I think it's like 2 or 3 books. But anyway, let's get on with this last week's comics. Let's talk about them. So we're going to start off with an arachnid, and that's Scarlet Spider, number 8. So basically, we have here Scarlet Spider versus the Rangers, which is they're an older, well, not older, but they're an initiative team that was based in Texas, because when they had the 50-state initiative, they were putting a super team in every single one of the states, and the Rangers just happened to be the ones for Texas. Makes sense, so basically what we have here is the emergence once again of Roxxon Oil as a big bad. Because they were always seen as being this very kind of corrupt force in kind of global economics. Obviously this, the previous issue, bringing, attention to the kind of malignancy that Roxxon is doing. And this issue kind of, also shows, well, the things that Roxxon has actually done that have been good for the state, but ultimately they all feed off of bad things that they do. So, it's just, what really struck me about this issue here, was that, basically, of course it's, kind of it's not a fight cute, it is meet and fight. There's nothing cute about this issue at all. And this is where Chris Yoss, his star kind of shines, is when he's doing Kane's internal monologue. And he's picking out the members of the, he's kind of, giving the once-over to all of the members, all the team members of the Rangers. And saying, well, this person, they're very arrogant, and this person's got something to prove, and this person's too self-righteous, and you can just kind of sense these things about them from just the way that he looks at the world and looks at other people. But still realizes that they're good people and they're probably trying to do the right thing. But ultimately, he has a job to do that he doesn't want to do. I mean, that's, this is literally the reluctant superhero book. Is that he doesn't want to be any of these things, but he keeps ending up kind of being forced in these situations where he is. So I think that's a very, it's not a novel concept by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an entertaining one nonetheless. So we have, basically, the interesting thing to take away from this issue is that it's just Yost he's a really talented storyteller, and Koi Fam's art in this is better than it was the previous issue. It's looking a bit kind of Mike Zeck-ish, which is a good thing. I like Mike Zeck's art a lot. Every once in a while, I still kind of look at my old, Marvel Superhero Secret Wars trade, and there's kind of, there's some really terrific art that he did there, and some of the, like the Punisher Circle of Blood, the original kind of Punisher miniseries that there was. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a very solid issue. Certainly nothing bad to say about it. It's not great, but it's this is a really good series. I mean, it's a from the first issue I thought it might be kind of maybe a little too 90s, but no, it's actually heading into a different and better direction. So this is a very solid 4 out of 5 for Scarlet Spider number 8. New Avengers number 29. This was a really interesting issue. The last issue, of course, was my pick of the week for that week, and deservedly so, because it was just a really, really, really well told, very action-packed, very dynamic story that had this great twist at the end. And what we have here is a very, very deeply personal story. That is about, it's basically Cap, what we see at the opening of the issue, it's Cap and the Invaders fighting back the Red Skull and his kind of Nazi hordes during World War II. And there's Bucky and there's Namor, of course. Namor says at one point to Cap, when Cap needs a save, and Namor saves him, basically says, well, that's what we do. We're brothers. And so basically Cap has called a meeting of the Illuminati. Basically, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, Black Panther isn't there. Charles Xavier, who I still don't understand why he's walking. I know that there's something more to that I must have missed somewhere, but frankly, I don't really care. Because he'll walk, and then he'll get in the wheelchair again, and then he'll walk, and then he'll get the wheelchair again. So it could be any number of reasons. But that's not important. What is important is that this is a book of ideas and arguments. And I'm not talking about arguments in the sense that they are arguing with each other, and there is some of that. But basically, it's the argument that maybe what the Phoenix Five are doing is actually a good thing, and that maybe the reason that Cap is really fighting this so hard is he's afraid that he won't have anything left to fight for. This is really kind of the thing that's this is kind of the question that's posed to him by Reed Richards. Basically saying, do you really want to, do you really want to stop them for the good of all mankind, or are you just looking to stop them because you need something to fight, or to fight for, I should say? And so it really, and as each character enters, and they all kind of have their own agenda for being there, and although more specifically, Doctor Strange and Iron Man seem to be there to kind of talk Cap out of it, to say, just let's leave, because Namor's not coming. He's not going to show up. And then once everybody else has left and Cap has remained, of course, that's when Namor arrives. There's a great moment with Xavier where he kind of loses his shit because, you know, everybody's, you know, he can kind of see it in their minds. They're kind of blaming him for what's going on. That, you know, that he hasn't taught his X-Men properly, and, you know, to respect all life, and to, you know, to be kind of at the, you know, to always be, you know, kind of, you know, the peaceful integration. And obviously this is looking, you know, they're looking at changing things by force if necessary. And the scene between and Cap and Namor at the end is very telling about the past they've had together, but ultimately what Namor has become and the influence of the Phoenix Force. Not that Namor was ever really a really great guy to begin with anyway, but you can see that this is, you know, and even this is something that, you know, some people even say that they kind of predicted, some members of the Illuminati have kind of predicted over time that Namor would eventually get to a certain point of power where he would try and kind of, you know, ramp things up in his favor. And so the question is not so much whether or not this fits character-wise within the continuity of Avengers versus X-Men, because obviously this is a tie-in issue, but because, you know, it might seem a little bit out of character that Cap is there waiting for Namor, you know, Namor who's just basically flooded and pretty much destroyed Wakanda. So you have to kind of take that out of the equation and just say, look, this is where these people are at this moment. This could have even happened before Wakanda, because no mention was really made of that. But you know, it's just, this was a fascinating issue to read. You know, Mike Deodato, you know, obviously much better known for his more dynamic art style, really kind of lays it down very kind of sweetly with this issue. It's very much about expressions and body language and, you know, quote unquote acting, and, you know, his artwork, you know, as always, is dynamic when he does his own, you know, you know, penciling and inking. When somebody else inks his stuff, it does not look good. It does not look as good, I should say. But this was just it's a really strong issue. It's a very, very strong issue. It's a very kind of quietly intense issue. And sometimes you kind of miss that. You know, when you have like these huge battles erupting all over the place, it's nice to kind of come back down to earth and say, look, this is where we all are, and that's it. So I really, really, really enjoyed this issue of New Avengers. Very, very solid 4.5 out of 5 for New Avengers number 29. Moving on to Fantastic Four number 609. Now, here's the thing about this issue of Fantastic Four. I don't know what the hell is going on here. Basically, that's what I took away from it. There are two things, really. Because I know that some of it has to do with, like, New World, and I think which is from the Millar and Hitch story arc that they did when they started writing, when they, you know, became a team on Fantastic Four. And, you know, it has to do with, you know, the futures, the Defenders of Tomorrow, and everything like that. And I just got really lost. I had no fucking clue what was happening. You know, that Galactus in the future, he's been retrofitted to become a, you know, a spaceship that will allow the future Earth to thrive, and I didn't get it. I just didn't understand what was happening in this issue. I wasn't familiar with any of the characters except for, you know, the FF, if you will, and so I was just lost. I can't really judge this book very well. The one thing I can judge, though, is the art by Ryan Stegman. Now, Ryan Stegman has been doing an amazing job on Scarlet Spider, but in this issue, he does his own. You know, he he does, again, like I was just talking about with Deodato, he does his own penciling and inking. And it became very clear to me in this issue that Stegman needs an inker. He does not do very well inking his own stuff. It's a little too abstract for my tastes. It looks, it looks very unrefined, and that's kind of Stegman. That's kind of his signature quality, I would say, as an artist, is that he does have a very solid artist style, but when he inks his own stuff, it starts to look not quite as polished, I guess. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes I don't mind that. Sometimes it's a bad thing, and it does bother me. So it did in this issue. So I mean, for the merits of the story, I mean, it just wasn't that interesting to me. And to those of us who kind of jumped on board, maybe with like I did, kind of like post Johnny Storm, post the death of Johnny Storm. And then, really signed on with FF, when Spidey became a member, and, of course, when Fantastic Four started up again, when Johnny Storm came back, it was this just, the 600 through 604 of Fantastic Four was just, I mean, absolute joy. I mean, those issues are fantastic. But, and last issue was really good. And some issues between have been really good. The last couple issues were kind of on the weak side. But again, you get Hickman doing his big science thing, and that's fine, but it didn't work for me, this issue. So it's a 2.5 out of 5 for Fantastic Four 609. Because it's not so much that the book was bad, it's just that I didn't... You want to be able to bring your readers in to a comic without having really known what's passed before, and have them understand what's going on in your narrative. So that's my take. Captain America 16. Wow. I mean, this is Jesus. I mean, you want to talk about a dip in quality. I mean, this book has gone from hovering around the the 4 spot to the 4 out of 5 stars to this issue. I'm just going to say flat out, it's a 1.5 out of 5 stars at best. Because again, it's Brubaker and Cullen Bunn, and again, if this is I'm going to say it again as I did with the last issue. If this is the direction that Cullen Bunn wants to take Captain America in, I'm going to be dropping this title like a fucking hot brick, because it is just you got this right-wing moron pundit who has apparently been murdered and been made into robots, and the studio that's broadcasting his apparently like 24-hour-a-day broadcast is they're like putting these subliminal messages in there, basically saying, look, it's time for Americans to stop trusting Captain America and stop trusting the heroes, and basically just beat the shit out of all of them, as much as possible. And their heart's in the right place. I get it. I get to have this kind of Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh kind of character that's like the villain. Brubaker's attacked the Tea Party before. He's gotten death threats because of it. And now he's going after, again, more extreme right-wingers. And it's just... it rings very hollow. I know where this is all going. I mean, this has all basically been set up by, by Zemo and the Viper Queen and by Codename Bravo. But to not see them, not to see their machinations, it loses the point. And Scott Eaton's art is just terrible. I mean, this is literally like scraping the bottom of like the 80s barrel. I mean, it's like, that's what this art reminds me of. It reminds me of really, really bad 80s comics. And that's just, it doesn't work at all. There's nothing about this book that works. There are some kind of cool moments that Dum Dum Dugan has, but this book was just a big mess, and so it's, like I said, at best it's a 1.5 out of 5, and just really makes me sad. Another one that made me kind of sad, but I knew where it was kind of going to begin with, so and that's Daredevil Annual #1. Now this is basically, we have Alan Davis is continuing he's doing 3 annuals, I believe. I don't remember what the third one is going to be, but he did the FF annual, or Fantastic Four annual. He's doing, he did this one, Daredevil annual, and he's going to be doing another one later. They're all going to they're going to all be having to do with the clandestine, or Destine, or whatever the hell you want to pronounce it. And aside from some really, really beautiful art by Davis, again, we're entering into a world that I just don't understand and frankly don't care about. Because this is, I appreciate that Davis is trying to bring, this kind of magical element into Daredevil, but that right there, I mean, magic, Daredevil, they don't go together at all. It doesn't happen. That's magic is way the fuck over there, and Daredevil, he's right here. So magic stays very far away. Which ultimately, because so Doctor Strange has to drop in so that he can explain some of what's going on to Daredevil. But there is, like I said, the art is fantastic. There's this beautiful splash page in which kind of the woman who is kind of looking, who kind of sees Daredevil watching her, kind of enters into his mind, and we see this tremendous splash page of all of Daredevil's various foes over the years. You have the you have like the Animen, you have Typhoid Mary, and of course you have Bullseye and Elektra and Kingpin and so on and so forth. But it's a great page. It's a great splash, double splash page, and it looks terrific. But other than that, I couldn't care less about what was happening in this book. I don't care about clandestine, whatever. So this was a 2.5 out of 5. Just didn't do anything for me at all, really. Other than give you some pretty pictures to look at. But other than that. So entering into the only one kind of independent that came out this week that I read, and that is Valiant's Archer and Armstrong #1. So again, we have another #1 kind of reboot of one of Valiant's old comics, and this is written by Fred Van Lente, and the art is by Clayton Henry. And basically, we have this young man, this Obadiah Archer, and he's the son of this like evangelical reverend, and his equally evangelical congresswoman mother, and basically he's being tested by all these other children that they live with. He's fighting them all with all these different martial arts styles and everything like that, to prove that he's the one that deserves to go out and do battle with he who will not be named. And they actually live in like this Christian evangelical, totally procreationism, and anti-evolution, amusement park. So that in itself is just kind of it's kind of a funny little some funny little stuff there. And of course we see how totally naive Obadiah is about what's going on in the real world. And of course he's sent to like the worst place of scum and villainy. Of course New York is what he asks, and naturally that's where he's going. And his parents have taught him that as he's writing in his journal, his parents have taught him that all that all of his, everybody who basically lives in New York, they're a bunch of liberal, Marxist, communists, degenerates, Nazis, and everything like that. And so he's had this very kind of wacko, religious upbringing, but been tasked with this, with this little kind of symbol that will help him find and defeat and kill he who would not be named. And then he basically stumbles into this bar in New York City, where I think this might actually be in Brooklyn, I think, and he confronts these this like biker bar. They call themselves the Sons of Perdition. And he starts to get himself into a whole kind of mess of trouble there. And who bails him out but this kind of poetry spewing, possibly immortal, super strong arm named Armstrong. And basically this is all prologue to the prelude, which sets this whole thing off, which is that basically it's during the time of like Mesopotamia and so on, like 5000 BC, and this is basically when the world ended, because these brothers, they were fighting over this the releasing of this energy, and they thought, one brother thought that the energy would basically it would allow all of humanity, or whatever humanity was in Mesopotamia, to live as gods. And the brother, who may or may not be Armstrong, is trying to stop him from releasing this, but of course it is released, and every living thing on the planet is destroyed. At least that's the legend. So kind of reinforcing the idea that the Earth is only 5,000 years old, and that's how long human life has existed for. So it's just kind of an interesting riff on that idea as well. And so Armstrong, he's big, burly, bearded man, and he's quoting Carl Sandburg, and he's throwing up on people. And basically he knows that he's just too strong, and Archer basically gets this weird vibe off of him from this little object that he carries with him, and of course it means to him that this is he who cannot be named, so he must kill him. So they end up kind of starting to fight each other, and they get to a point where they, Armstrong, he's like, Archer's a little bit too fast for Armstrong, but Armstrong can't be hurt. So they just kind of end up there with, Archer's fist is just kind of sitting on his face, and they're both just too wiped out from this kind of endless, fighting, ducking, hitting, no damage being done, but they're both basically knocked out by these kind of creepy, hooded, almost like Templar-looking guys, and then they're brought into Wall Street, and they're chained up there, and Obadiah gets himself free, but leaves Armstrong there, because he wants to kill him when he gets back to find out why he's been captured. And of course, once he discovers the truth about why he's been captured, and what exactly his whole role to play in this is, he sees that certainly not everything is as it seems, and that's when things start to get really bad for him. Of course, we're not going to find out about that until the next issue, at the very least. But we have, again, a really strong first issue. It may be a little too kind of ripped from the headlines topical, in the sense of, having, the villains of the piece essentially kind of being the 1%. That they believe that greed is actually, it's godly. That greed is, it's not only just good, but it's godly. So they've expanded upon, Gordon Gekko from Wall Street, his famous, greed is good. So, going there, it's a little silly, but I mean, for the most part, it's a fun ride. It's, to see this very naive character and then, to kind of get introduced to this obviously very worldly character. And so Fred Van Lente, I mean, he's a really good writer. Some stuff of his is kind of hit and miss, but he did a great job on the Taskmaster series. Those of you who've had the chance to read X-Men Noir that he wrote, it's really good. The art by Clayton Henry, though, in this title is terrific. It's really, really good. It's very strong. I mean, I like the fact that that Obadiah, he's kind of like he's kind of like a younger Captain America. He's very, he's not like super buff or anything like that, but he kind of wears this shirt with a star on it and everything like that, and very much believes in America and everything like that. Believes in freedom, believes in God, and just all of these. But he's kind of like if you stripped, Captain America of all of his personality and made him just kind of a, kind of this strange-o evangelical mouthpiece, I think Archer is ultimately who he would have. So again, this is a very solid first issue for this, these releases from Valiant. So I'm really happy with this stuff. I'm very much on board for pretty much all the issues that I've seen so far coming out of Valiant. So very solid 4 out of 5 for Archer and Armstrong #1. So moving on to DC, so we have Batgirl #12. So we have Bats, girl and woman fighting. The moment has long last. The moment that has been built up for a long time that you knew was coming eventually. Here comes Batgirl and Batwoman to duke it out, and believe me, Batwoman gets the advantage. She's a much more efficient fighter. She's a much better equipped fighter than Batgirl, and even so far as to be equipped with a silk handkerchief that she carries around. And this has a lot of Gail Simone's kind of ticks in it, where basically what we have here is kind of the setup to kind of a climactic confrontation between Batgirl and Nightfall, and basically that ultimately Batwoman is she seems to appear just at the beginning, but it's interesting. It's always interesting the way that Simone writes her Batgirl's inner monologue, because we do really get a sense of how smart she is tactically, but also how deeply emotional she can be. She's not Batman, she's not Nightwing, she is very much her own character, and that's one of the great things about what Gail Simone has brought to this book, is that she's really fleshed out Barbara Gordon as well as she did, obviously, during her run, and probably even better on her run on Birds of Prey. I should say that the Birds of Prey run was better, but this book is still really good, and to have Babs back in the suit and everything like that is always a nice thing to see. But see the way that she takes everything in, and she really kind of uses, like, it's an emotional fuel, but also her intelligence, as far as having her eidetic memory and so on and so forth. It's really unique the way that this book feels. But we learn two very, very, very important things. Well, one we already knew, but one of the other characters, Jim Gordon, didn't know it. And then the other big thing that we learn is that Nightfall has had a mysterious benefactor this whole time. And I don't really want to spoil it, but I'm going to. So I'm going to do my, here, my hands up. Here's the spoiler, so you can mute for a second. So here it comes. Her benefactor is James Gordon Jr. And that is awesome. So, spoiler done. You can come back now. Turn it up. So we've got this this great emergence of this this familiar villain who was worked with so well in probably one of the best comic arcs of the last couple of years, I would say, and just right on, man. I mean, this was a really smart. This is a really good comic. It could have been a little bit stronger. It could have done a little bit more to pull me in. This book hasn't really gotten there yet. I still feel like this book it's been very even, with some higher and some lower, but it's been a very solid book all throughout. It hasn't been, wow, this is awesome, or wow, this sucks. It's always been just, it's always been on like that 4 out of 5 level. And that's what this issue is. I mean, Batgirl number 12 it's a 4 out of 5. I mean, our DNCF, he's a really, really good artist. It's nice to, it's nice to see Babs back in the suit. And it's nice to see her fighting these kind of fights. And of course, seeing her face off with Batwoman, that's always cool for me. Again, 4 out of 5 for Batgirl number 12. Now, Batman and Robin number 12. Now, this book has obviously broken somewhat from its kind of initial narrative of the first arc of the series, which is that, this is very much a dynamic between father and son. With issue 10, we started with, the War of the Robins, which wasn't, touted as being an event. It was just that basically Damian's saying, look, I'm going to fight all the other Robins to prove that I'm the best. But also in the midst of this, we've got Terminus and his flunkies and so on and so forth, still kind of going all over the place, branding everybody. And so, he's already fought and successfully kind of defeated, Tim Drake. He's fought and successfully defeated Jason Todd. And so now in this issue, we have to look forward to the inevitable confrontation between Damian and Dick Grayson. But we also have Batman versus Terminus. Now, here's the thing about this issue, is that when did Batman become Iron Man? And I get it, okay? I mean, I get it. Terminus has got himself a big power suit and it's got a countdown timer on it and everything like that. That basically shows, we think that what this is counting down to ultimately is that it's counting down to A, his death, and B, the release of his nuclear warhead. That's going to come back and, it's going to airburst over Gotham City. But what it actually is a little bit more interesting than that. But he's, this power suit and everything like that. So Batman kind of changes into his own power suit, and I really had a hard time believing that Patrick Gleason drew it like this. And maybe this is intentional, I don't know. But he gave him like the stuck 3-point landing, the fist, the foot, and the knee in Batman's kind of first appearance with this kind of like battle armor, power armor on. And of course, he uses this to kind of make some pretty short work of Terminus, but still the city is under threat, and here come the Robins to help kind of save the day, and just in time too, because the next issue of all of these comics is going to be the issue 0. And so we get to see Tim Drake as Red Robin and being his history of being a Robin basically one last time, because with issue 0, I think, starts for Teen Titans that he will no longer be a part of the Robins. He will no longer have been one of them. So that I think is horrifically stupid to several degrees. But I don't read Teen Titans, so I don't care. Um, but anyway, so I mean that was interesting in and of itself. Just kind of realizing that, yeah, I think they had to bring him out one more time in a Batman book, so that, okay, yes, his relationship with Batman is obviously still, it's still there for now. But the ending of this book, gosh, it seemed awfully familiar. I think there were two films that came out this summer, two really big films that came out this summer that kind of ended in a very similar fashion. And that was where I thought to myself, really? Really? I mean, they couldn't have given, I'm sure that Peter Tomasi probably had the opportunity to watch The Dark Knight Rises or to watch The Avengers. And wouldn't somebody at, I don't know, maybe an editor or someone like that, could have sat him down and said, yeah, let's rewrite this ending, because it might seem a little bit too familiar to people who are familiar with these films. Because that's where this issue kind of lost me, is that I was with it pretty much all the way, for the most part, until it got to this kind of like, well, really? Are you doing that? Basically that was kind of like the face I was making too. It was like, no, they're not going to do this, are they? Really? And then I get to the end, and I'm like, they did that. Oh my god, that's really not very smart to do at this point in time. But points for effort. This was, it was readable. It was a good book. I mean, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I'm very interested to see where this book goes from its zero issue on. Hoping that it gets back more to the father-son dynamic that drives this, or that at least drove the first arc of this book. I'm not expecting that to be the whole thing, all the time, but there are a lot of Batman books out there. Let's have one that maybe can ratchet it back a little bit and allow itself to be more emotional. So it was a good read. So it was 3.5 out of 5 for Batman and Robin number 12. Demon Knights, number 12. So with this, basically we have Morgan Le Fay is back. And she's basically behind everything that's been going on for this current arc, where it's basically they're investigating the death of Merlin. And the finale of the previous issue kind of gave us this little cliffhanger of that. Basically, Etrigan intends to sell out his fellow Demon Knights, whatever, because they haven't called themselves anything yet. The medieval Justice League, whatever you want to call it. He intends to sell them out to the devil, and so basically, what we have here is that. Morgan, and I've forgotten that she is actually a sister of Madame Xanadu, or Nimue, as she was called then. I do remember her being Nimue for a while when I think Matt Wagner was doing the kind of limited series of Madame Xanadu, the mature readers one, which I'd hoped was going to have a little more, I don't know, boobs or something like that. I'm so juvenile. And that reminds me, remind me later. But I know you can't remind me, but I'm just reminding me to remind myself, I guess, later. So basically what Morgan is doing is that she's intending upon, basically, the Demon Knights and King Arthur have entered into Camelot. And of course, it's much larger on the inside than it is on the outside due to the magical properties that are there. And what we have here is that Morgan she basically wants to become Merlin. She is going to basically enact this spell in which she will trap all of the members of this little group. I mean, who knows what to call? They're not really a team. They're not really a group. They don't have official titles. So, to our heroes, if you will, are kind of anti-heroes. Some of them are anti-heroes. And some of them are just downright villainous, but they're there to serve a purpose, like Vandal Savage. And Vandal Savage is really funny in this book. And he's got a very sharp and very, not very sharp, but a very kind of exasperating tongue, if you will. But it's always funny. And so basically they are all meant to become a kind of magical sacrifice so that Morgan can basically kind of make herself good again. That she intends to inhabit Merlin and act as Merlin would. That she even says, I don't intend to be bad. I intend on being as good as Merlin is. Kind of morally good as Merlin is. Once I'm in his body. But I need this in order to, to kind of, leave, kind of a better impression of myself than when I came in. Being the kind of, incestual, being kind of an incestual relationship between, with, her half brother of Arthur. I don't know if that particular mythology actually holds up within the DC universe, but that's obviously the legend. From Le Mort d'Arthur. But anyway, the issue has the finale has a really nice ending. There, the cliffhanger, in which we're gonna have to wait 2 months to find out what happened. Is that basically the message here is once Etrigan starts to rhyme, make sure you get out in time. And that one just came off the top of my head. Believe me, I didn't work on it. I didn't script it. But yeah, get the fuck out if you hear Etrigan start to rhyme, because it's bad news. And that's what we have here at the end of this issue. Again, this is, and I was posting this on Damien, or Sleepy Reader 666's most recent vlog, that, yeah, this is a little bit, the book itself, you want it to go to a place that's better. It's not that it's bad, it's just you want it to be better. And Paul Cornell and especially Diogenes Neves, I mean, he's a fantastic artist. He's terrific. I could just look at this book and give it like a 3. But ultimately, it's Paul Cornell that makes the voices very distinct. He's made a really good book here. It's just not really good. Every week, every month that it comes out, I just keep hoping that, okay, well, it's going to finally, like Batgirl, where it's going to get to that point where it's like, yeah, man, I'm fucking hooked. And it keeps kind of falling short of that. So I'm hoping that, maybe after, maybe with and after the 0 issues, some of these books that are kind of on the cusp will start to improve. But at the same time, I don't want to see. I want to see these 2 people on this book. I don't want to see it change creative teams or anything like that. But I would like to see more out of these books. So again, a 4 out of 5 for Demon Knights number 12. Like I said, it's good. It's really good. It's very solid. It's just not really good. So on to our picks of the week. This was a really tough one. I have to say, it's both covers are kind of misleading, and one is really misleading, but that's okay because they're obviously kind of going for more artistic effect than anything else, and obviously to kind of get you pick up the book and start reading it. So I'm going to declare this a tie. That doesn't happen very often, but both books were equally good. And I'm going to start with the one that you all kind of know is coming. And that, of course, is Batman number 12. What a terrific story. because basically what we have here is that, you know, Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo had kind of introduced us to the character of Harper Row a few issues back, as he was being bailed out of kind of a crisis situation by Harper, and you know, her of the, you know, the very punky, you know, hair and look and everything like that. But basically this book is her story. This is about the story of how Batman changed her life. And basically her and her brother Cullen, who is gay, they live in the Narrows. Now this is the first time that I can think of that the Narrows has ever been referenced in a story about Batman since Batman Begins. I'm sure that there probably have been, in fact, come to think of it, I think there may have been other instances where the Narrows have been mentioned, but the Narrows played such a huge part in Batman Begins because that's, you know, basically that's where the slums were, and that's where Arkham Asylum was. And so, but this was really the first time that I remember that they've really discussed the Narrows. So basically what we have here is that, you know, Harper and Cullen, they're very not well-to-do. You know, they live in the slums. She works for basically Gotham's DWP, for, you know, their Department of Water and Power, or just Department of Power, or whatever it is. And she's just really good at fixing things because her, you know, their father was a drunk and he was constantly breaking things. You know, Cullen, being gay and living in the Narrows, he gets bullied quite a bit. And Harper, basically, we first kind of meet her in this issue as she's about to be, she basically won this raffle to go to one of Wayne Industries' parties at Bruce's house. And so it was just, you know, kind of happenstance that this all started. And then, you know, after that, and after certain events that take place in the issue, particularly when Batman actually comes to their aid in the Narrows, basically defending both of them from the gay-bashing assholes who are basically looking to beat the living crap out of Cullen once again. And she becomes, at that point, obsessed with Batman, and even, you know, starts to find out some of his secrets, if you will. Now, this issue, one of the things that makes it so strong is that it has very little to do with Batman. And it is all about these two new characters that just in this one issue, Snyder has made me care a great deal about. I'm really liking these two. I like where they're from. I like their stories. I like their characters a lot, and I want to find out more about them. Here's the thing, though, is that this book, the book itself, just the title that Snyder has created, has a very balanced approach to things, and in the sense that it's always great, but it's always has had this element of, you know, Snyder really kind of keeps going for, like, he's kind of raising the stakes constantly. So I don't know exactly where the book is going to, well, I know where the book is going to go from here, because we're going to get back the Joker. But this book, this particular issue, is illustrated by Becky Cloonan, and also Andy Clark, who does, like, what would normally be the backup story, you know, where the Fall of the House of Wayne, last 3 or 4 issues, the B story, basically takes over for Becky Cloonan after the first 22 pages, to fill in for the remainder of for the next 10. But Becky Cloonan, she's a very, she's a very independently minded artist. I mean, some of her work almost kind of reminds me of Brian Lee O'Malley's work. But she's very focused on on faces, on eyes, on bodies, and body language. Again, it's about the acting of the characters, something that she does really, really well. I wasn't that familiar with her work really before this. I picked up kind of not a flea market like a lot of you guys go to, but just there was, I'll grab it over here. There's a used bookstore that always has 50-cent comic books, racks full of 50-cent comics, and I picked up some really sweet stuff. I'll just kind of go through some of them, like the first issue of Point Blank, which is Cole Cash, aka the Grifter, in Ed Brubaker's Sleeper storyline. Some issues of The Shadow Strikes, which is terrific stuff. I tried to make it kind of a Brian Augustyn weekend. Brian Augustyn, as some of you who have watched this over time know, he's a good friend of mine. Not a good friend, but he's someone that I do proudly consider a friend. I even got a couple of his issues of Crimson. For those of you who may remember this, art by Humberto Ramos. This is a really terrific comic. I already own all of these issues, but I don't care because they're his work, and I'll buy it if I can find it. But I did find actually all 5 issues. This was a huge win for me, personally, is that I found all 5 issues of Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin's Doctor Strange: The Oath. So that was huge for me. I already have the trade, but having the individual issues just makes it that much more awesome, because this is one of my, this is easily my favorite Doctor Strange story ever, and it's a great work by Brian K. Vaughan. But I picked up some issues of Powers, picked up the 7th issue of Justice League International when Giffen and DeMatteis were doing it, and McGuire was doing it. This is another issue, it's an issue of Queen and Country. This is the Free Comic Book Day issue. Basically, it's the first issue reprint. But God, do I love Queen and Country. Greg Rucka is such a genius. There's another issue of Crimson, another issue of The Shadow Strikes. Shadow Strikes was edited by Brian Augustyn. But this is what I was getting to, and this is Demo by Brian Wood and Becky Cloonan. And you can see that she has this very, very, very specific style. And it's just this book, and this is where this book was a change of pace, not from a story standpoint necessarily. Obviously, it is, but not from its quality, I should say, but from just its kind of storytelling standpoint. Is that Greg Capullo could not have done this issue. There's no way in hell that an artist like Greg Capullo could have pulled this issue off. It needed somebody who, you feel like Becky Cloonan already knows these characters. She's already kind of worked with these characters. For all we know, she probably created them in some other incarnation of work that she's done. So it was just stunning from beginning to end. Andy Clark's art to kind of finish it up as Batman's kind of facing off against Tiger Shark. It didn't seem that jarring when I was reading it. It didn't seem like, oh my God, this is really, the art style has really changed. Of course, when I went back and reread it a couple times, just like, okay, well, I do see, obviously the art style has really changed here, but it's not so, it has a much more realistic anatomy and so on and so forth, and, much finer and much more delineated art style, but it's, but it works mixing with Becky Cloonan's art. So just a tremendous issue of this comic, and another stellar star in an already pretty much brilliant run of Batman by Scott Snyder. So 5 out of 5 all the way for Batman number 12. But what was a pretty big surprise to me this week, not a big surprise because it did not start off well, but it has gained a lot of traction, and that is Spider-Man number 4. Is my other pick of the week. And this was just, basically what we have here is that, you know, Peter being in the Ultimate Universe, you know, Peter Parker from Earth 616 has been, you know, thrust into the Ultimate Universe, and here he is for the first time meeting. He has come to the home of, you know, of May Parker and Gwen Stacy. And of course, Gwen Stacy is, you know, she's a high schooler here, and, you know, which isn't too far away from the age that he last saw her in. Not too far, anyway. But, you know, basically, they are very upset with Peter at first that he's shown up there. But it ultimately becomes this very wonderfully emotional issue, and there's not a lot of negative emotion being thrown around. There is a little bit at first, obviously, because they're very upset with him, because they're saying, what kind of sick bastard would do this to us? You know, but he goes on to explain that he is Peter Parker, but he's not their Peter Parker. And, you know, there's a lot of, again, another very conversational book by Bendis this week, other than New Avengers. But again, the conversations, they all have meaning. And, you know, and one thing absolutely take away from this book, Sarah Pichelli's art is, I mean, it almost makes you want to cry. And speaking of crying, this was a very charged issue. It's full of emotions, full of emotional impact. It's very bittersweet, almost all throughout. I mean, you feel good, but you feel sad for everybody involved. You know, for Gwen, you know, for Aunt May, for MJ. But then you have, you know, these bits of, you know, kind of wonderful humor moments with Gwen and Miles upstairs talking with Peter, as he's explaining things about, you know, Mary Jane being a supermodel and everything like that. You know, and of course she's still, you know, a high school kid at this point in time. And again, this is another part where Sarah Pichelli's art really just stuns. And that's, again, I go back to this a lot this week, but it's about her facial expressions, about her, you know, the specifics of her body movements, of the body language of all the characters, you know, the kind of standoffishness. I mean, there's a great moment where Gwen kind of, you know, gives that kind of, you know, kind of affectionate punch to Peter, and then they embrace, and it's just it's this issue is just packed full of wonderful moments like that, where basically, you know, Peter, you know, and Aunt May are there together, and Peter says, with great power, and then Aunt May of the Ultimate Universe says, comes great responsibility, you know, with great responsibility. So it was just, that in and of itself is a magical moment and almost worthy of the 5 stars that I'm giving this book. But, you know, we also have, you know, how Bendis has done such a great job in capturing the character of the characters of each of the other kind of you know, Ultimate Universes, denizens, if you will, their inhabitants. You know, like the fact that, you know, when Peter meets Tony Stark for the first time, and it's like, well, my Tony's actually stopped drinking a while ago, and of course Nick Fury in the background is like, I like him already. And, you know, it's like, is there a Nick Fury in your world? You know, Nick asks, you know, and Peter's like, yeah. And it's like, well, what's he like? Well, he's like you, but white. And it's like, you know, and Nick's like, you know, well, too bad for him. And it's just, you know, this, you know, it's full, it's just peppered with these great little character moments, and this terrific emotional, you know, resonance. The one complaint that I would have with this issue is the cover. And if I had the actual issue, I would show it to you, but I suggest that you take a look at it online. But because I got this issue digitally, Um, but but basically what we have is this issue where Peter is kind of holding this very bruised and battered and bloodied Miles, and it's like, so I'm expecting this thing to happen in this issue, and nothing. No, there's no fighting that happens in this issue. It's all about the relationships, and kind of, you know, Peter's tour, if you will, of the Ultimate Universe and how they're looking to get him back. But just all in all, this was a fantastic issue. An absolute 5 out of 5 for Spider-Man, for Spider-Men number 4. Excuse me. You know, I was really not too pro on this series when it started, but once you got to issue 2, which is why I still maintain that issue 1 should have just been an issue 0, and they just should have gone from there with the story, because once the story actually starts, you're in for some really, really excellent comic storytelling. So that's it for this week of New Comics, bitches! Again, if this is your first time here, please subscribe. You've sat with me for an hour now, hour and 6 minutes. So thank you for that. Obviously, thumb it up if you liked it. Thumb it down if you didn't. Let me know your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, your criticisms, whatever. Comment down below. Let me know how you feel, people. You know, if you stopped by to watch it, just say, yeah, I watched it. Thought it was interesting. Good review. Whatever. You know, but don't just say that. But just, you know, drop me a little note, say that you came by. Because I always like that. And I always try and do that with everybody's reviews that I go to. So, or just their vlogs, what have you. And, certainly some interesting things going on in the Marvel Universe right now. More Marvel Now announcements have been made. I'm really of all of the books, I would have to say now that I'm looking forward to, it's the Indestructible Hulk that Mark Waid is going to be doing. But we have, you know, Matt Fraction doing both Fantastic Four and the FF. And you know, just some other unusual titles that are coming out. Whatever, I think it's like the new X-Men or something like that. That's going to be written by Kieran Gillen, because Uncanny X-Men is ending with the next issue. So interesting stuff. And of course, yeah, Remender, and you know, who's apparently like the new star of Marvel now. Apparently. Bendis and Brubaker and others of their ilk are starting to outlive their usefulness, or something like that. So we've got, you know, Remender and Hickman are all over the place now. So we got Remender and John Romita Jr. doing Captain America for Marvel Now. Whether or not that's just going to kickstart, or if they're going to have 2 concurrent Captain America titles out there, that'll be kind of it'll be strange, but whatever. So yeah, that's it. I did want to also weigh in, Ghost Critic Mark. I wanted to show you something that I think is like my weirdest like comic book collectible type thing. And here's the thing about that. I really struggled long and hard with this, with this idea. Okay, well, what do I have that is really weird, but is still related to comic books, and you know, it's just, you know, like your wallet. I really couldn't find anything. Because I mean, my apartment is littered with comic book stuff, but I think it's all really cool. I don't think any of it's strange. I mean, like right here, you know, I have my. This is, if you can see this, in kind of bad light, but this is my bullseye that I actually, it's from the, from the Toy Biz catalog. Basically, I took their bullseye figure and I customized it. I gave him basically the leather coat that he'd been wearing in Brubaker's and Bendis's run on the character. and I also balded him up and gave him some eyebrows. And actually, you can't see it here, but I took I heated up a safety pin and I engraved the bullseye on his forehead. So that's like, I guess, although I did have to break off his arm to put him in that leather jacket, because that's the leather jacket belonging to the Marvel Legends Blade figure. So yeah, I have done some customizing in the past. I don't really do it anymore because I don't have the time or the energy. But yeah, that's like the weirdest thing that I've got. I mean, that's the most unusual thing I have anyway. Yeah, there's that. So, but anyway, so again, thank you for stopping by. Of course, those people who, that I've talked about, like Sleepy Reader and Ghost Critic and, Minutia Minute and, Agent 42Q and, Howler Mouse and Coast and Brown Star, all you guys, go out and search for these people. If they're lucky enough to come here and talk, and Gambit, I think it's 526-536, whatever. Your name is Count Noob. All my buddies, all my YouTube pals. Go and check out their channels, man, because they do some of the best stuff out there, and it's always interesting. It's probably and it's always shorter than my stuff. So that's it. This is me, James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery, saying goodnight to you. Thank you for dropping by, and always remember to stay in the shadows.